There are those in this life who have chosen to be warriors, and they are needed. There are those who have chosen to hold only love in their hearts, and we are needed. There is room in this world for all of us, and we are all needed to fulfill that which we came into this life to fulfill. Hi, I'm Diana Rankin, a life coach, a psychic medium, a spiritual guide, and I want to talk to you today for a few minutes about why is life so hard sometimes, and maybe make a little bit of sense out of the senseless. Before we enter into this life, and by the way, I do go into this in one of my books, The Found Child, and it was actually two recent things that prompted today's talk with you. One, the horrific events in the United States, in Orlando, Florida, where a mass murder took place and 50 people lost their lives and another 50 plus were seriously injured. And hundreds were left traumatized and families in mourning. A terrible, terrible event. It's not the first time it's happened in the world where we've lost too many people due to anger. And it's not the first time we've lost too many people because of a natural disaster. And our hearts need to be able to heal after that. Only because we have no choice. We have to go on. And so I want to talk to you, I want to talk to you about that, but the other thing that precipitated this talk today was one of my clients had just finished reading The Found Child, one of my books, and then also with one of our discussions, she wrote and she said, help me understand why I chose what I chose before coming into this life. And if I chose to heal that, why do other people have to go through it? Or if others before me have chosen to heal that, why do I have to go through it? Let me see if I can address all of those issues in the next few minutes. As a soul, when we choose to come into life, and we're the one who put our hands up and said, hey, me, let it be me, let it be me. And I often say, had I read the small print, I might not have been the one who put my hand up. But you know, I'm glad I did. I really am. We gather together a team of soulmates, of those souls who can help us both in this world and in spirit world. And once we have our team together, we then come into life. But we come into life with a calling, something very specific that we're going to be asked to heal in this life, that we're going to be asked to make a pathway for others to follow that they can heal. We do this for a variety of reasons. One of them is we want the experience of it, and that may be because we, for lack of a better term, let's call it karma, but we experience maybe the opposite, or perhaps we hurt someone in the past, and so we want to experience what that felt like for them so we can forgive ourselves and also forgive them and see how it takes two people to create the problem and solve it. We may choose our issues out of compassion. On another video, I talk about the story of Kuan Yin, and to really understand compassion, please do go listen to that video. But what we're doing is we're healing something. And it's very hard if I've already healed that, or somebody has healed that and they've created that pathway, why is it still so hard for me? And why would I choose a life as a warrior if I could choose a life as just holding love in the world? Well, again, we choose for a whole variety of reasons, and we don't choose the very specifics. We choose the big overall calling. You know, there's a wonderful small little book out with a very big message by David Spangler called The Call. And what he explains to us is our calling may start with something very small, such as a smile at a stranger, and then it may grow very, very large. And I do want to say that I'm grateful for those of you who are warriors, because in our world today we do need them. But I'm so grateful also for those of us who have to hold the love. And I've never been a warrior, so I can't really speak to that. But what I can say is holding the love is not an easy path. It may sound easy, but those of us who are always trying to change fear into love, it's not an easy path. It's a very difficult path, as I'm sure that of the warrior is. It's an ancient religion, but it is still practiced in part of the world. Zoroastrians believe that there's evil and there's good, and that they're struggling with each other, and that good will always win. And I agree with you. Love will always trump fear, always. So what we're doing, and I'm going to use love as the example, is every person who heals who accepts into their calling and heals that issue which they've come into this world to issue, our individual lives get better, but we're also the pathway. The first person who heals the issue, the pathway is very, very narrow, and so we're all these other people with the same issue. We're trying to get into that narrow pathway. So the more people who widen that pathway, then it will be easier and easier and easier for those who come behind us to be able to step into that pathway of healing. And it will be easier for us, but it will also be easier for the people trying to heal whatever the issue is. In my case, the issue happens to be abandonment. And I see that in a lot of my clients. That means to me that a parent either abandoned the family or the child, or either physically or emotionally, that the parent wasn't there for the child and providing the child with the love that was needed. And so the child, as the child grows, the child has to then find other ways to get that love. And it usually plays out that we have silly relationships that don't work out, and we have to learn how to work relationships. But I will talk about abandonment on another videotape. On this one, what I really want us to understand is we all have chosen a path, and that's our calling, and we don't necessarily agree with the other person's calling. That doesn't mean we don't look at common sense and say, look, you don't have a right to do this in my life. And we have to have those boundaries. And in order to live in any kind of society, we must have rules of law, we must have boundaries. But let us not condemn the other person's role in this life, their calling. And calling is always toward the help, always toward growing something greater. Calling is always toward making something in life better for those who come behind. And the warrior makes life more peaceful in a way I would definitely not choose. But it is needed in today's life, unfortunately. And so those who practice that calling and that path are not wrong. They're just fulfilling out in the best way they can their life pattern. When we look at those who have sacrificed, whatever that sacrifice is, and in the worst cases, it may be the sacrifice of their life. But out of that comes so many beautiful gifts. And it is those gifts that we really want to look for. It is those gifts that we must look to. In the case of Orlando, what we've seen, we saw 49 birds fly over during one of the ceremonies. We saw a double rainbow over Orlando. So we are receiving those gifts. At 9/11, many people reported seeing angels over the Twin Towers. So we look for those signs, we look for those gifts that our loved ones do give us. And we bond together in order to make life have more meaning. And in one of my meditations, which you're all welcome to come to, but it's in Ohio usually, and I know some of you are in other countries, so it's a long way to travel, but you're always welcome. But in the one group, many of the participants have lost children. Horrific experience to have. and we say, how could we as souls all participated in that? Did we really have this agreement? And if so, then what is the gift? One of the gifts is very simply these, and they're mostly women. These women, I see them bond together in their grief, and those who have been grieving longer are able to help those who are new in their grief. In my own life, the abandonment script has allowed me to help so many others who I understand their hearts, I understand their pain, and although I feel I've done so much healing for my life, I'm at that where I'm able to then help others heal and feel that joy, that deep joy that life really truly is. So I'm grateful that I experienced that as a child. About 9-10 years ago, I had a motorcycle spill, and I know people look at me and they say, you're not big enough to be on a motorcycle, let alone ride one. But I did, and I went down in some gravel and didn't get home for about 2 months. And I look back at that, and I'm grateful for that experience because it allows me to go into the medical community and really talk to people about why it's important to develop medical personnel, and why it's developed, why you need to develop your intuition to help your patients, and then how to use that intuition to diagnose and to cure. So everything in our lives has a purpose, whatever path we've chosen, the warrior or the peacemaker, or all of those paths in between. And we need to respect one another. The warrior needs to respect the peacemaker, and the peacemaker needs to respect the calling of the warrior. And all of us in between need to respect that all of us, every single being, came into this life to serve a purpose. The LGBT community, I'm old enough to remember back in the 80s, when there was no LGBT community. There was a gay community, there was a lesbian community, and there was a terrible, terrible epidemic of AIDS. The people in that community, the men and women, gathered together and created a brand new community. And I know they're reaching out to those who have just been devastated by what happened in Orlando, because they understand pain, and they understand how to hold that in your heart and not get bitter, how to hold that in your heart and still be a peacemaker, and still be one to hold love. I hope I've made a little sense today in your life. I thank you for listening. I thank you for recognizing what your path is, what your calling is, and living it to the fullest, highest principle of all, not in anger, but in love, in answering the call. And perhaps the peacemakers are here to protect you and help you go to your next level. And perhaps the warriors are here to protect us so we can do that work. Thank you. I love each and every one of you. And I thank you for receiving my love. This is Diana Rankin saying thank you. I love you.